In today's world of market volatility and uncertainty, your retirement plans need to be front and center. With ever-changing tax laws, healthcare worries, and an unpredictable stock market, don't overlook the vulnerability in your retirement planning. Protecting your family and estate will be difficult with shifting policies in Washington. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome into Eye on Retirement, the weekly show that keeps you in the know about all things retirement. I'm Rick Everett, your host and financial advisor at Market Advisory Group, along with the full complement of panelists today, to include Danny Goolsby, founding partner at Market Advisory Group, Joshua Sikora, our lead CPA from Market Tax Services, Corey Hebert, healthcare advisor with Market Medicare Advisors, and estate planning attorney from Eidelman Law Firm, Gerald Eidelman. Welcome in, everyone. Danny, before the show, we were talking and you said something that was very interesting. You said a good retirement plan is like a recipe. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Sure. So if you go back and you look and think about family get-togethers, there's the family recipe, there's the secret family recipe, there's the things that was handed down from generation to generation. You go back to commercials from the 60s and 70s and maybe early 80s, and they'll talk about secret things in their ingredients for a particular food. Kentucky Fried Chicken's like that. They have their 11 herbs and spices in their ingredients. If you talk about Calgon back in the 60s and 70s, they had an ancient Chinese secret based on how to clean the clothes, if you will. And so retirement planning is a lot like having a great recipe to make sure that the outcome is the desired effect. If you put the wrong ingredients in at the wrong time, you're going to get the wrong effect. When it comes to retirement planning, income planning for retirement, you want to make sure that things are going smoothly for the rest of your life. And so income streams at retirement, that could be, the big question could be, what I don't know could hurt me. Life used to be a lot simpler than it is today. When it comes to Social Security filing for benefits to begin, I can remember when my parents did that. They simply went down to Social Security office, they filed it, and they got their Social Security check. That was when they used to deliver checks into your mailbox, and they would do that for the third day of each month. And that's the way everybody across the United States got their Social Security, was on the third or fourth day of the month. But today, filing for Social Security is so much more difficult than that. They try to make it easier by filing by telephone, filing by phone, filing by mail. You can go down in person, but it comes from different income streams. Where is the recipe that's going to benefit me and my family the best? Because of the different incomes that you may have in your household. You may have Social Security. You may have work for an employer that has a pension. You may have a 401k that you've contributed to. That 401k may include company stock, and that company stock could play a big wrinkle into things. You may have IRAs. They may be Roth IRAs. You may have rentals. You may have farm income. You may have inherited IRA retirement accounts from a previous generation, and you could have inherited non-retirement accounts. All of these have different tax statuses to them. And so what's the perfect blend of recipe for you and your family?
Joshua Sikora, Market Tax Services. How do taxes play into a retirement recipe? Danny mentioned Social Security as an example, pensions, IRAs, etc. What are the tax ramifications of these different recipe elements?
Yeah, so as you go into retirement, these new income streams come in. It's like cooking with new ingredients, right? You're trying to get to the same dish that you're preparing, but with different ingredients comes different things you need to keep in mind. You don't have those wages anymore that you've had for all these years. You know how those work. You know how withholdings on that works. You know how it plays into the different parts of your life. Now you've got Social Security, which isn't completely taxable. You've got your company pension that may be coming into play, distributions out of your IRAs, and how are these all going to play together? It can be complicated. And that's where we step in and help people. And we talk about, you have these different pieces of income. What's going to happen as they start coming into the picture, and how are they going to impact your taxes? If you have, let's say rentals, or let's say you have a brokerage account that you're trading, how is that impacting your tax situation? it can be complicated. There's lots of nuances into these different pieces. They play in with each other, and it can be complicated to make sure that you're getting to the tax answer you're looking for without you yourself having to become an expert into these different pieces and understanding how it all works together.
You know, we could almost use the analogy of that famous chocolate chip cookie recipe that Mom has made for years and years and years, and it's always been the exact same ingredients. But let's say she goes to visit Aunt Alice in Colorado, and now all of a sudden she's at a different elevation, and the ingredients need to be amended for altitude.
That is a great piece to add in there. So let's say you've got your retirement that you're cooking along with. It's coming up perfect every year. You know how it's going to play out. And then Aunt Alice passes away. And because you guys compared cookie recipes for so long, she leaves you something in her will that as a benefit, you know, some kind of cash blessing, if you will. How is that going then to mix in with your existing retirement recipe? You know, is it going to be an inherited IRA that's going to impact you for several years? Is it just cash out of the bank that doesn't even have a tax consequence to it normally? Things can change during retirement that impacts how this cookie keeps coming out.
And so let's talk about that from a standpoint of when you're doing a recipe at home and you're making chocolate chip cookies or you're making bread or whatever you're making, there probably is an order to how you put those ingredients in the bowl and mix those together. So when it comes to taxes though, tell me about, is there an order to the different income streams that can benefit me or could hurt me if I put these in the wrong order? If I put these ingredients in the bowl and mix them all up together, am I going to have a bad outcome tax-wise?
Yeah, you sure could. So we typically divide your income streams into the things you have to do and then the things you choose to do. If you have a pension, you have to take that. If you're collecting Social Security, you have to take that. But then if you're, you know, young enough and retired, then your IRA, you don't have to do that. You get to choose if you want to take those distributions or not. And so if you're taking money out of your IRA first and then dealing with the consequences on the things you have to do, your cookie's going to get baked out of order and it's likely to turn into a mess.
Denny, this is an example where it is of extreme benefit to have a whole team working together with a common goal of getting to the finish line or the finished product, if you will, in the best shape possible.
I couldn't agree more. You know, there is a famous nationally known CPA. He's known as America's CPA. His name is Ed Slott. And Ed Slott says this. He says, whether your retirement dreams are 5 years away or 50, the single greatest risk or the greatest threat standing in your way is taxes. He goes on and he says this. He says, unlike losses in the stock market, none of us like the market to turn against us. But unlike losses in the stock market, money lost to taxes never recovers, never recovers. And so how much money am I losing because I've not addressed the tax aspect of this? And so, Rick, to your point, exactly so. Having a complete team, yes, the investment side, the planning side for the income, that is certainly an important part. But as Ed Slott mentioned just earlier, again, money lost to taxes never recovers. We need to address the tax side of things.
In this episode, we're using the analogy of a recipe, much like a retirement plan. And Danny's right. When you put a little too much flour or sugar into the recipe, the cookies taste a little bit off. Market Advisory Group can help keep track of your retirement recipe to make sure it tastes just as sweet as you've planned. To set up a complimentary no-obligation visit with our full team, operators are standing by right now to take your call at 316-252-8707. That's 316-252-8707. And be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. When we come back, we'll be cooking with Crisco, and we're also going to add a cup of Medicare and certain tax implications into this recipe to see what happens. That comes your way right after this.
Out on the water, there is a moment. Perfect synchronization. The team working together in harmony to reach their goal. Now, Imagine finding a team of financial professionals to help run your course down the river of retirement. Market Advisory Group is that team. Financial advisors, tax professionals, estate planning attorneys, and Medicare advisors. All in the same boat. If you don't have a team like this in one place, it can become a hassle to relay information between them. When you come to Market Advisory Group, we bring everyone together for you. To get you answers in real time. To help make sure you don't miss something that puts your unique plan off course. You shouldn't be the one doing all the work to keep your retirement on pace. You should have a team in the boat with you. Your voice telling them where you're at, where you'd like to end up, and how you want to get there. And at that point, everyone falls into sync, all pulling in the same direction, toward the same purpose. Your retirement's financial security. We are Market Advisory Group, proud sponsor of Shocker Rowing.
Hi, and welcome back into the second segment of Eye on Retirement. Danny, we're talking about the delicate recipe that is retirement income planning. Can you take us through a time when you met with someone who didn't necessarily have a good recipe to cook with?
Sure. So we run into people all the time that will be a do-it-yourselfer, if you will. They'll hear something from a national TV show or maybe a friend or a coworker that has said, hey, you know, taxes are going to be a big thing, and you need to look at doing some Roth conversions on maybe on your traditional 401k, your traditional IRA. You need to make sure that you can try to do as many Roth conversions because tax-free is always going to be a better thing than taxable. And so this person would say, okay, we'll take that advice and we'll just go. I had someone one time I knew that had a rather large IRA, rather large, more than $1 million. And he was convinced that taxes were going to go up in the future, and relatively rapidly he was. And so, again, this is before we met him, but he wanted to convert his IRA all at one time. And so to convert your IRA at all one time into a Roth IRA was enormously painful. Now, it may have had some good outcome for him down the road, but it was enormously painful in the moment. But what also caused him off guard was, to your point, Rick, is that there's a sneaky little tax in the tax code called IRMA. IRMA is one of those famous little acronyms from the government that says income-related monthly adjustment amount. Well, what does that mean? Well, that has to go with what you will pay for your Medicare prices. And what happens with that sneaky little tax is that you'll find out how much you will pay for your Medicare's Part B and Part D 2 years down the road. So what you may do today, so if I'm this person who's doing this Roth conversion because they want to get rid of the tax on their traditional accounts, their traditional 401k, the traditional IRA, that's a good thing to do. It's certainly admirable to do that. But if you don't have the complete puzzle of where the tax code's going to jump up and bite you somewhere else, or that if you don't have that recipe that we've been talking about, this IRMA price that this person is going to pay 2 years later, it caused their Medicare premiums to more than quadruple. And so that it came out of left field. He wasn't expecting that to happen. And you can prevent that if you have a good team to work with.
Joshua, I tell you what, the wrong ingredients at the wrong time, it can have a disastrous effect.
Yeah, so earlier we talked about how there's pieces of income you have to take and there's pieces of income you can choose to take. These tax planning considerations like Roth conversions is usually something that you choose to take. You don't have to take. And so much like when you're cooking, the recipe will say salt to taste. Well, if you're just dumping that salt in, which is like converting the whole IRA all at once, you're not tasting it. You're not seeing the consequences of your decisions until you've put the thing in the oven, it's come out, and it tastes awful. And so when we're working with clients, we will go through and we will model out what this Roth conversion is going to look like, we'll say, okay, here's your tax consequences. Here's this IRMA adjustment that you're walking into. Does that taste good to you? Some people it will, some people it won't. It's not until we can walk them through that and let them see or taste how it's going to come out that they can fully understand the consequences of those decisions.
Corey Hebert, Market Medicare Advisors. Can you go more in depth, if you would please, about how income can have unintended consequences on someone's health care?
Yeah, and I'll try to stick to our cooking theme as best I can here, because we have this conversation all the time within our office of whenever we are talking about IRMA and Medicare, whose job is it to keep our clients informed about IRMA? It's all about taxable money. How much money were you taxed on 2 years ago? So is it our tax guy's job? But we're talking about money in general. Is it the financial planner's job to make sure that they know where those limits are and keep them away from those limits? But they're affecting your Medicare premiums. So is it the Medicare guy's job to talk about this? Keeping with our cookie theme, here in Market Advisory Group and everything that we do, we have 3 layers where we're constantly checking that to make sure that are there chocolate chips in the cookies? Mm-hmm. It's not just one person's job to make sure that that is there. We have that 3-layer protection because you're talking about over a $500 swing on a monthly basis. And whenever IRMA is applied to your account, this isn't something that just disappears once you make less money. It actually takes the client being proactive and going to Social Security and talking to them and saying, hey, I know I had that one bad year, but here's what my tax return looked like this year, and here's how my taxes have gone down. And that's some of the worst advice that I ever have to give to people is you need to go in person to talk to Social Security, because that's never a fun conversation, and it's not always easy to get the right message across whenever we are going in there.
Thank you, Corey. The income-related monthly adjustment amount, or IRMA, was brought up earlier. But whose job is it to keep you informed about triggering IRMA? Your financial advisor, Medicare advisor, or your tax advisor? When you have a whole team, you don't have to ask that question because all the advisors work together so IRMA doesn't take you by surprise. Market Advisory Group is that team. And if you'd like to visit with us to get your plans in place, reach out for that complimentary, no-obligation visit at 316-252-8707. And be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. We've got one more segment where the recipe all comes together, and it comes your way right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have. By running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Hi, and welcome back into Ion Retirement. Danny, today we have talked about income sources and how they relate to taxes and health care, but we haven't talked about estate planning yet. Do these income issues affect the next generation as well, or can they?
Well, sure. And if we staying on this recipe theme, if you will, recipes are handed down from generation to generation. Well, unused assets are handed down to generation as well. And I want to go back to Corey. We said something in the last segment that Corey was talking about whose responsibility is that. He was talking about Medicare. Is that the Medicare agent? Is that the investment advisor? Is that the tax person? I want to ask Corey, who gets to lick the bowl when you're all done?
Always the client, Danny. Always the client.
Always the client. But when it comes to estate planning, that's also true with a recipe as well. And that is that, you may be leaving assets that may be much bigger than you realize. And so, Gerald, what does that look like when, from an estate planning standpoint, when a recipe can be made maybe in one generation, and you find out later that it didn't have a real long shelf life, or there was a bad taste, something went awry because it was bad planning in the previous generation, so that now the inheriting generation, maybe that doesn't come out to the best effect for them.
That's right. What estate planning reminds me of is sort of those competitions where people are making chocolate, figures or what have you. And just the slightest little thing can make the sculpture crumble. You get it all ready, it looks great, you move it, you present it, and then all of a sudden it falls apart. And that is the way the estate planning works if you're not preparing for it. I mean, you won't be here when your estate plan will go into place, when your family will have to deal with the consequences of what you created during your life. And so you won't be able to give any help to your family at that point. So the idea is that when we sit down to work on a estate plan, is to think about all the different ingredients to make sure that once you're gone, once you put the statue on the mantle, that it's not going to crumble. There's many aspects of estate planning. First of all, there's the next generation, and you want to take care of them. You might want to take care of this second generation of grandchildren. If you're old enough, you might have grown grandchildren, and you want to leave assets to. And then, of course, what kind of assets do you have? If you have rental property, what is at stake there is managing those rental properties once you're gone. Many people have a handful of rental properties that they have come to know how to maintain them, to be able to collect the monies. All of these things have taken years of learning. What happens when you're gone? So in part of as we're preparing the recipe for the chocolate, we're trying to figure out, okay, how much of this do we need to put in there? What protections do we need to, is this something that the rental company that the next generation is want to have anyway? Do they want to carry this over? Is there a particular child that wants to take over? All of these things are going to play a role as to what happens after you're gone. Because if you don't make the determination, you leave it up to your kids, then you're leaving them with a mess where they have to sort of negotiate between each other. And I know I hear this all the time, oh, my kids get along great, this is great. But I've seen it enough times where things don't quite mesh together. When there's money involved or business involved, there's always some contention as to who's in charge, who is supposed to do what. If you have company stock that you have left behind, I mean, what happens to the gain in the company stock since you bought it? I mean, do you want to preserve that gain so you can pass it on a stepped-up basis to your grandchildren or grandchildren? Do you want to cash it out now? Do you want to use it for charitable purposes? There's just a myriad of things that we can do. Farms is a big deal around here. I mean, people have had some of these farms for 3 or 4 generations, and they don't want to give them up. And the client that I'm facing may be 50, 60 years old, and they're still farming, but they don't know they don't see the future as to how the next generation is going to be able to take over. You know, they have several kids. Most of them moved out of town. They're not farming. Maybe one of them is helping them. You know, but you can't just leave the farm to that one child, because then you're disinheriting the other children from that property. And so part of the negotiation is trying to, or the conversation is trying to figure out how we can make sure that that child who's participating in the farm, who might be able to preserve the farm, can also own the farm without disinheriting the other children. So all these different aspects come into play. The temperature, you know, the amount of cocoa you put in there, the amount of sugar, all of these things are going to make a difference as far as how solid your plan is. And my job is to guide you through that in every aspect of your assets, so that when you're done, you have a sculpture that will stand the time.
There are too many ingredients in retirement planning for a layperson to keep track of them all. That's why it helps to have a whole team in place to keep an eye on it for you. If you'd like to set up a complimentary, no-obligation visit with this team at Market Advisory Group, now is your opportunity. Just give us a call at 316-252-8707. Again, the number to call, 316-252-8707. And be sure and check out our website at ionretirement.com. That's all the time we have for this episode. I'm Rick Everett, along with the entire planning team, reminding you that we're here to keep an eye on retirement.
Unless otherwise indicated, all client and prospect names mentioned on this show have been changed to protect the identities of the individuals discussed. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Edelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in this show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. All rights reserved.